Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation, a production of Empower Mississippi, where we believe everyone can rise if we remove barriers to opportunity. I'm Grant Callen, founder and president, and today we're talking with someone I have long admired. He's a restaurateur who created some of my favorite places to eat in all of Mississippi: Purple Parrot, Crescent City Grill, and Ed's Burger Joint are just a few of his creations. But what you may not know is our guest today is also a leading advocate for second chances because he has received a second chance. Robert St. John, welcome to the conversation.
Good morning. Happy to be here, Grant. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to this. You've got your sweet tea and I've got my coffee. So let's jump in. You have been very public about the fact that you've been in recovery from alcohol and drugs since the early 1980s. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so I'll give you the quick Reader's Digest version, best I can. And so if I go back to the earliest memory I have as a kid, like if I go all the way back to the first thing I remember, I was about 5 or 6 years old. I was at my parents' house. They were having a cocktail party. And that was the kind of the culture at the time, and I was made to go to bed early. And I can remember just lying in bed, listening to the grown-ups, and there was laughter and there was drinking and there was ice tinkling in the glasses. And it just, I kind of romanticized that at an early age, that's how you have fun. And so my dad died when I was 6. My mom was a school teacher. She raised my brother and me up on a school teacher's salary, and I really had a good childhood. I would consider, a very good childhood. We didn't have a lot of money, but had a lot of good friends. But I was always kind of searching for something else. There was just something in me that wanted to feel different or a part of something. Now I had to work early on. I started working when I was 12. I still got a real job when I was 15. As a radio station disc jockey. And I worked 40 hours a week all through high school. As if I was going to have any money to do anything, I had to do that. What also that put me around a lot of I was 15 and everybody I was working around were in their 20s, in a different stage in life and a different stage in their entertainment choices, I will say. And so I started, drinking beer when I was probably 14 and smoking pot, around that age. And for a long time, it really didn't. I kind of had the world by the tail. I had no consequences, no really ill effects. And there are a lot of people, there are two schools of thought. Some people think you're born alcoholic. Some people think you become alcoholic somewhere along the way. I don't have an opinion on that either way. What I know is that I am an alcoholic. Today, I'm a recovering alcoholic. So I don't spend any time worrying about that. But I can pinpoint a time, about a 2-month period, sometime when I was around 19 years old, where I crossed some kind of imaginary line. So likely I've got the gene. And I crossed some type of line, and I went from this got the world by the tail kind of guy to I started paying consequences for my drinking and drug use. The drug use had really stepped up into some really scary, dark places. And I got into a situation where I couldn't hold down a job, kept getting fired from jobs. I came home one day and I flunked out of college, which was one of the first things. I went up to college majoring in communications because I'd been working in radio, and I figured, I had no clue what I wanted to do. So that's what I knew. And mainly what I did was just party a lot. And so I flunked out of school. I came back. I was really embarrassed. Came back to Hattiesburg, my hometown. And I got a job working in a restaurant. And it was one of the first things that it clicked. It's like, not this is what I wanted. It's like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so I really, from the day 1 or 2 in that restaurant, it was like, I'm going to open a restaurant. I love this. I love it. But I had no way to do that. I was this lost soul, and just I was a prisoner of alcohol and drugs, and I was blacking out. I mean, I was 19 years old, almost blacking out every night, and got fired from tons of those jobs. Couldn't keep a job. Still wanted to open a restaurant one day. Didn't know how I was going to do it. But on May 25th, 1983, I'm going to back up. About a year before that, I had gone home one day. I was having to live at home. And everything I owned was in garbage bags on the back porch, and all the locks had been changed. And my mom had had enough, and she had been talking to people. And so she practiced some tough love, and I kind of bounced around a little bit, ended up in this ratty old trailer park, ended up getting evicted from that place, and basically would have been homeless if not for a loving grandmother who took me in. And so I was living with her. May 25th, 1983, I was driving home from a friend's house in pretty bad shape. And back in those days, I would get pulled over a lot, and this is not a good thing. I would get pulled over a lot. And back then, this was before Mothers Against Drunk Drivers or anything like that. They'd stop you. You've been drinking. Yeah, had a couple of beers. Okay, go home. That's kind of how it was. There were no designated driver. None of that was going on back then. And so I got stopped a lot. And I went for a few years not even drawing a sober breath. I was in really bad shape, alcohol and drugs. So this night I was headed home about 2 a.m, and I passed a police car. He turned around and I saw him turning around. He turned on his lights, and for some reason, something clicked. I was kind of, my thinking obviously wasn't the best in the world. And I just hit it. And I turned off my lights, and I was going about 90 miles an hour down 4th Street in Hattiesburg, Mississippi at 2 a.m. I learned really quick that you may be able to run from the cops. You can't run from the radios. And within a matter of seconds, I had 3 cop cars behind me chasing me. Well, I ended up in jail with a DUI. And I called my mom from jail. I was 21 years old. And I said, look, I've gotten this DUI. And she was waiting on one of 3 calls. It was either going to be from the hospital, the morgue, or the police station. And luckily, this call was from the police station. And I hadn't injured anybody else driving 90 miles an hour with my lights off like a madman through town. And so she said, we can do one of 2 things. We can either sell your car, pay this fine, or you can go to treatment. And I said, well, sell my car. I didn't know anything about treatment. I had one friend who had gone, and we didn't know what happened to him. So Betty Ford wasn't even open at this time, so it wasn't like a thing. But I knew I didn't want it. Now, I thought I was kind of having fun. I was like, what do you do if you don't drink and you don't use drugs? I mean, how do you have fun? What is there to do? From my earliest memory, laying in the bed at 6 years old, parents having a cocktail, that's how you have fun. Of course, the fun had been over a long time by the time I had gotten that DUI. I mean, Budweiser wasn't coming over to my house filming commercials saying, if you drink our product, you can live like Robert, who just got evicted from the trailer park. I mean, it's, the party was way gone, and I was barely surviving. And so I went to this rehab center in Jackson. It was Mississippi Baptist Hospital Chemical Dependency Center. It's not there anymore. And my plan was to do whatever this treatment thing is, and then lay low and come back and just kind of party, on the download. Nobody will know kind of thing. But because that other guy I knew that had gone to treatment, and he's like the golden child in everybody's eyes. So I'll be that guy. So I went up there, I played the game. But my plan was, as soon as they put me in a halfway house in Jackson, my first free weekend, I was coming back to Hattiesburg. I was going to party low key, do some alcohol, drugs, and then go back and not tell anybody. Well, I thought I was being a model patient in this place. Obviously, I wasn't. And I did 9 weeks in a 6-week treatment center. And instead of sending me to Jackson, they sent me to Omaha, Nebraska, to a halfway house run by the Catholic Church called St. Raphael's, which was located in an old mortuary. And they gave me a one-way ticket and said, you're going up here. You're not ready for society. And so I went to Omaha, Nebraska, and it was run by the Catholic Church. Like I said, it was filled with a bunch of young guys in their early 20s like me. And they didn't automatically just let you in. You had to go through an interview process with the clients there, with all the other guys. And they said, look, you're going to sit here and you got to be totally honest with us in this interview. And they fired all sorts of questions at me. And I'm like, I'm going to answer everything because I had a one-way ticket. I'd be homeless in Omaha, had I not. And so probably for the first time in my life, I was gut level honest, especially with people I didn't know. They accepted me. They let me in. And it was on a Friday. This is what I remember. It was in August of 83 on a Friday. And I had been in that treatment center for 9 weeks. And I said, guys, do they let you go? They said, yeah, it's Friday night. We're going out tonight. And I thought, all right, fine. Finally, we're going to get to do something. And I said, where I had been living in clubs and bars and, a pretty hedonistic lifestyle. And I said, well, where are we going? And they said, well, we're going to the skating rink. And I went, oh. I thought this is exactly what I thought sobriety would be like. This is what living sober, I'm 21 years old and I'm going to the skating rink with a bunch of guys.
Right.
I hadn't been to the skating rink since I was in the 7th grade, but it was going to be better than staying in a mortuary by myself at night, a former mortuary. So I went skating. And here's the deal, Grant. On a skating rink in Omaha, Nebraska, in August of 1983, I had some type of spiritual experience. It wasn't a light on the road to Damascus kind of thing, that, anything supernatural. It was really just some type of realization that, because I had fun. Mm. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I can live a life without alcohol and drugs and I can have fun and lead a full life and maybe not have to go through all these getting fired from jobs and trying to, find money here and doing all this kind of crazy stuff. And it hit me on that skating rink that it's not necessarily what you're doing, but it's who you're with and how you feel in here when you're doing it. Mm-hmm. And that's the first time I ever thought, you know what? I may be able to live life without alcohol and drugs. And so here's the thing. I was since May 25th, 1983, I've been clean and sober. And I feel I hadn't missed a thing. I hadn't missed a thing in life. I've missed all the consequences is really the only thing I've missed. So, I'm happy to be here. I still do a lot of 12-step meetings and things like that in my recovery, and try to help others when I can. And I guess that's part of the reason I'm here today.
Well, it's interesting to me that what sounds like the turning point in your story was an interaction with the law and getting a DUI. And that's interesting because for a lot of people I talk to, that's really where their life begins to crumble and they spin out of control when they have an interaction with the law. So why did that not happen for you?
Well, I think a lot of that would have to do with my mom, who had kind of she had geared up and prepared for that moment. She knew it was coming. I mean, the way I was living. Here's the thing: I had resigned myself at 21 that I wasn't going to live to see 30, and I was okay with that. That's kind of situation. That's where I was. The truth is, I probably wouldn't have made 25 the way I was going. And so she talked to friends and she kind of had a plan. So when that call came, first she kicked me out of the house, locked the doors. That was some tough love, but it was the thing to do. I have friends who I watched their parents enable them and keep, bailing them out of situations. Well, my first hard situation like that, I didn't get bailed out. I ended up in a rehab center. And it saved my life. I promise you, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have been on this planet the last 30 years.
So what would have happened? Let's imagine that you got hit with a 10-year prison sentence.
Yeah.
Would you be where you are today if you'd spent 10 years behind bars? Or was getting recovery, getting treatment, a different path?
Well, so I'll answer the question this way. Me going to recovery saved my life. It saved my career, and it allowed me to do the things I've been able to do, whether it's charitable, all those things. I came out of rehab. I think, and I don't know, and I've never had this experience, and hope I never have it. But had I gone to prison for 10 years, I was so passionate about opening a restaurant. I would have gotten out and tried to do something, but I wouldn't have had the method. You can't get a liquor license. I don't think if you're a convicted felon or something like that. But I still would have gone into restaurants, but going to rehab instead of for drugs and alcohol. The thing is, alcoholism is a disease. It is recognized by the ADA as a disease, and so that's my lot in life. I don't spend a lot of time, thinking, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, poor me. Here's the thing. Some people have psoriasis. Some people have diabetes. Some people have cancer. People with psoriasis, they rub a cream on it. People with diabetes have to take insulin. Cancer patients are doing chemo or radiation therapy. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. And what I do is a 12-step recovery plan. It's so, I am a huge advocate of those type of, as long as you're not selling things to kids and things like that, if you're an addict and you're in the throes of addiction, these drug courts, I love drug, and I speak at graduations to drug courts because they are some of the best things. They have some of the best success stories around. And I would encourage anybody watching this right now, if there's ever a drug court graduation in your neighborhood, or just come to the one they do in Hattiesburg, it will warm your heart to see what they go through for 2 years, and people who were headed down a really rough road that could have ended up in prison, but they stayed out. They were monitored. They were forced to go to 12-step recovery meetings, and it changes people's lives. And in a long term, it's not just the recidivism rate there is very low.
Yeah. Minds are changing, but some still believe that the more harsh of a sentence, or the more we drop the hammer on those who use drugs and alcohol to the abuse, the greater the deterrent it is for other would-be users. They say, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Do you think that's a flawed way to think about the way the law should treat those who have addiction issues?
I don't know if my thoughts on that are going to be on one side or the other. I've never really even answered this question, but I'll tell you how I feel. Is that, and I can only speak from my experience, that I started drinking, beer with a bunch of high school buddies, and some people got it and some people don't. I have that gene. I am predisposed. My body metabolizes alcohol differently than a normal person. So I had friends who drank as much as I did and did all those other things that I did, and they could go to school, they could go to class, hold down 2 jobs and make a 3.8. I couldn't do that at all because I've got this thing. And so I think what I would say is that, it's hard to penalize people for a disease that they have. Now, it's another thing. If you're driving and you hurt somebody, you kill somebody, which by the grace of God, I never did, and it could have happened to me, and it didn't. If people are selling drugs to kids and things like that, that's a whole different deal. But people who are in the throes of addiction or alcoholism, whatever our system can do to get them help, like I got. And then now I was fortunate. We didn't have any money, but I think my grandmother probably stepped up to the plate, who had a little money and paid for my recovery. But I think we could, society would be much better off if there were treatment centers for people who were suffering from addiction, and not, the penitentiary.
So you have also hired a lot of people who have either come out of prison or who are recovering addicts. What role does a job and the dignity of work play in someone's recovery?
Well, it's huge. And I do that because you spoke of second chances earlier, and I was given a second chance. One of those jobs I was fired from after I got sober and came back to town and got back in college to get a degree to open a restaurant. They hired me back, and so I got a second chance. And I don't know if I deserved a second chance, but I got it. And I made the most of it. And I think they ended up with a good employee who was passionate, that kind of worked like it was. So that's what I try to do. And sometimes you get burned, but I would say 80% of the time it's worked out well. You can, it takes one to know one. I can kind of judge character a good bit. And Pine Grove, the recovery center here in Hattiesburg, is a national recovery center. There are people that come from all over the country and go to alcohol and drug rehab here in Hattiesburg. And so a lot of them, Hattiesburg has a really good recovery community. And a lot of the reason is because of Pine Grove is here. And so a lot of them stay here. And so we've employed a lot. And sometimes, I remember we had back in the 90s, a guy who came up maybe from Florida, and he was a doctor, like a gynecologist or something. And he got a job washing dishes for us just because he wanted to kind of humble himself and live modestly. And he's a huge success story, still sober today, practicing medicine again, those kind of things. So those are the opportunities you can give people. And that's, I'm a huge believer in second chances and sometimes even third chances. If people are, and the key is you've got to have people who have the desire to change their life and lead a better life. And they just need a helping hand and a hand up. And I want to be, because I didn't know what grace was. I used to hear that song, Amazing Grace, and I had until I was a beneficiary of grace, it became very clear to me. And so, I try to practice that same thing.
Do you find that the people you hire who have been through really tough things, do you find that sometimes they're more motivated and more driven to succeed than maybe someone who hasn't been through that past?
I think I think it's a case by case basis. I think that could be, I was that guy. And then I think some people need a couple of, they have a couple of false starts and if their heart is true, then you kind of stick with them and go. And, I think there are several, if you're familiar with Leisha Pickering,
yeah,
what she's doing with her soap company. And I think everybody that works for her are former inmates, and, she's doing a great job. So, it's a case by case basis. You got to find the people who need a break, and they're wanting to do the right thing. They made mistakes, and they're ready to kind of start leading a better life.
You mentioned drug courts, and drug courts are certainly a tremendous way to help those. And there's a much better track record of somebody going to drug court and recovering than going to prison and recovering. But it's also just makes sense for taxpayers.
Yeah.
It is not effective to take someone who really is not a hardened criminal. They just have an addiction issue, put them behind bars for a long time. There used to be this sort of notion that, well, at least we'll send them to prison where they'll dry out and they'll sober up. And, the fact of the matter is there's often a lot more drugs in prison than there is out. So drug court is a way to get people back on their feet without this huge cost to taxpayers in an already overburdened prison system. So when you go to these drug court graduations and you see these folks that are maybe on the first step of their recovery, and maybe not by choice, maybe they're forced into it because they got caught.
Yeah.
What do you tell them?
They're really not on their first step because they're 2 years. By the time they're graduating, they've been clean and sober 2 years. And they've been going to 12-step meetings daily and meeting with counselors. So they're pretty, But what I tell people always is what they told me at that treatment center when I ended up there in '83 is somebody, I don't even remember who it was now, but somebody told me, Robert, you never have to drink again. You never have to drink again. And that was a revelational thought to me at the time, because I thought, what do you do? I mean, everybody I knew drank, all my parents, all their friends, I mean, everybody. I grew up in that culture, and that's just what people do. And so it sounds kind of stupid, but when I heard that, I was like, oh, maybe, people actually live without alcohol and drugs. It's, whoa. And so what I tell people is, if you don't want to drink again, there's a way to do it. You never have to drink again. It's going to take some work on your end, and it's not going to be easy some of the time. It's a very simple program. These 12-step programs are very simple, but it's not easy early on. But it leads to, here's the thing, and I'll talk about me, but I'm sure this is the whole thing. What I knew in those, I was into pleasure, whether it was liquid pleasure or chemical pleasure or sexual pleasure. It was just, that's all I knew. I could get to some point. But when I got clean and sober and started practicing a lot of those 12-step principles, then I came to know happiness, and that was available to me. There wasn't a lot of happiness going on towards the last couple of years of my drinking and using. But then when I really start doing some of those things, whether it's spiritual practice, things like that, then I can experience joy, which is really where I was headed. When I was just this pleasure seeker, I was looking for joy, but I was just dealing in pleasure, which is fleeting and temporary. But what joy is, and I don't walk around in some state of zen, like that or whatever, but joy is happiness with peace and serenity thrown in. And there was no peace and serenity in my life before I stopped using alcohol and drugs. It was just a constant, battle of covering up for this and trying to find this. Where am I going to get money for this? All that kind of thing. There was just even when I was asleep, I wasn't at rest. And so today I can experience joy. It's not because of me, not because of anything I've done, but I've experienced grace. God has worked in my life. Other people in recovery have helped me. I'm a beneficiary of a whole lot of things that I've really worked against a lot of the time.
So let me ask you this. If we zoom out a little bit, Mississippi is in the middle of a prison crisis. We have the second highest incarceration rate in the nation, which means we lock up more people than almost anywhere in the world. There's a lot of things that are underneath that, but certainly those that are behind bars because of an addiction issue is not an insignificant percentage.
Yeah.
What would you tell policymakers who are listening? And do you think your story or your approach to addiction and recovery, do you think there's a lesson there for policymakers about the way we treat people who have addiction issues?
Well, I don't know a lot about that other than, what I know is that drug court works. Doesn't work 100% of the time, but it works way, way. I know the percentage is really high because I've seen these people and now I see them around in recovery and clean and sober for, 6, 8, 10 years. And what I know is that had they wound up in prison, and again, somebody who's selling and dealing or somebody who has harmed someone, whether it's a robbery or a drunk driving, manslaughter type thing, I got nothing for that. But innocent, people who started drinking just like everybody else, and they got the gene, this alcoholism, drug addiction gene, and they get in the throes of that, then we've got to have a little more compassion and we really just need to be wiser and smarter in how we deal with that. And I think it costs so much less if you're just looking in the cold fiscal terms of what we're doing with state tax dollars, then, those people are living and where they have to have a job when they're in drug court. And I think if we pump way more money into drug courts, into those type things, and for the right people, I mean, in the wrong people weed themselves out of drug court right away. They don't stay clean and sober. They don't work. They aren't going to meetings. Boom, they go to prison. It's up to, and they do it to themselves. And so, the system works, and it's, it's that. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's really how I feel about it. I don't know enough about the prison system, and that's a good thing about how it works. I know it's hell on earth up there from everything I hear, and just what people have to do to survive in prison is certainly going to affect you when you come out.
Well, I am so grateful for your story and your leadership on this issue and being public about it.
Yeah.
I have one final question, a little bit off topic. How quickly can I get a burger at Ed's Burger Joint in Fondren?
Well, we are, I'm in the restaurant business, and it is in the middle of this pandemic. It is the worst time in the history of the restaurant business to be in the restaurant business. And so, I mean, we were, full speed ahead, ready to open up in Fondren. It was a great project, it's a really big project, a lot of moving parts. And then this pandemic hit. And so it's been put on hold a little bit, but we're ramping right back up right now. We just had talks this week. And so hopefully, by the end of 2021, we'll be up and running all the way, and things will have gotten back to normal, and we're ready. I've said for a long time that I think Fondren is the coolest neighborhood in the biggest city in the state. So we'd love to. There've been a lot of opportunities for me to go to Jackson, but that's the one I hopped on. It really, really feels good, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it is a great community, and it's a great spot, and I think it's perfect for your style of restaurants. And I'm looking forward to having one a little closer than Hattiesburg.
There you go. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you for coming on, and thank you for sharing your story. And we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good, buddy.